Man, I don't know how to preach after just the songs are just so beautiful, I think. I was going to say it is great to be here with you all, but I feel like I'm just it is great to be here with you all. But I'm just so thankful for the time that we have. And the series that we're going through Psalm 23. Psalm 23 is a psalm that a lot of people who go to church grow up hearing, and if you're new to church, it's a psalm that you know now because it's one of the most famous psalms, and that's why we're preaching through it in this series, because it's impactful in ways that I think have touched the hearts of God's people for the last 2,000 years, obviously, of the church, but also beyond that because it was written far before Jesus even walked this earth. But what I want to start out by recognizing is that sometimes when we come to church, it can feel like a bit of a bummer that we're here. And what I mean by that is that we leave our busy lives to come here, and there's any number of things that we could be doing on a night like this. Like, for example, maybe just raise your hand if you have like homework that you need to finish tonight. Yeah, there's at least like a good amount of you. So you're here, and you decide to come to church during a night when you have plenty of other things that you could be doing and also plenty of things that you should be doing, if you know what I mean. Maybe you have a project due tomorrow or any number of things that you have to finish tonight. Maybe you have to go home and clean the dishes because your parents left them for you. Or maybe you have to take out the trash. I don't know what it is. But what I want to recognize is that there's just a lot of things in life that are continually being put on our plates and that are stressing us out in ways that are burdening us. And I think that when we come to church, it can often feel like we're taking time out of our week to do something that's not really productive, it's not really helpful, and it's not going to get those things done that need to get done even tonight. And even like if we step back for a moment and just look at American culture in general, I wanted to share a couple stats with you. First of all, it's sometimes hard for us to get rest in our lives because, here we go. I think it's on the screen if you want to throw that up there. There are these stats that I looked at where I was looking at how many hours Americans in general work. This is just from a quick Google search, but the average American works something like 1,800 hours a year, or 1,811. If you compare that to some of the more prominent countries in the world, like Italy or Japan or the UK, France, Sweden, Germany, they all have different numbers. America's not actually at the top of the list even, but we're pretty high up there. And so when you compare to, let's say, Germany, the interesting thing is if you work this out and you say the average work day is 8 hours a day and the average work week is 40 hours a week, Germans somehow are managing to work something like 12 weeks less each year than Americans are. 12 weeks less, which is crazy to me. How are they getting it done? And Japan even, look at Japan, like 1,600 hours a week. And the sad thing is they're still making better cars than we are. Germans too. I mean, come on. I'd rather have a German-made car or a Japanese-made car than an American car. I've had an American car, and I'm trying to sell it. The answer for why we work so hard is not necessarily so clear, and so I can't point to like certain answers and say, this is why we're doing this to ourselves. I have a couple ideas. One of them might be like, we live in this society that we call a capitalistic society. How many of you know what capitalism is? Okay, hopefully that's like most of you. Capitalism encourages us to work because if we work, then we can produce things that we then get to reap the benefits of. And so the system itself is almost encouraging us to work harder because if we work harder, we get real benefit from that. So America was built off this idea that you can work and be the person that you work for. You can make yourself who you want to be. And so our culture is encouraging that. Maybe another idea is that as a culture, maybe you've been faced with this before, but we're a fairly individualistic culture. When we look at the way that we live our lives, we focus first and foremost on who are you as an individual. If I asked you, what are the most important things about you? you likely are not going to say, I'm a son or a daughter of my family, or I am any number of things other than like, this is what I'm going to do with my life. What's the most important thing about most people? They would often say is, this is what I do for work. This is the things that make me who I am. And so we're very individualistic. We very much think about what I'm doing and how I can produce to bring value to my life. And so I wouldn't necessarily say those are the exact things that are causing Americans specifically to work more than other countries, but we do put emphases on those aspects of our life. And even, this is another thing I was thinking about, if you were to ask most people in Washington, why do they live in Washington, maybe like King County specifically, a lot of people would say, well, I live here because I got a job at Google or Microsoft or any of the other big tech companies that exist out here, and so people move across the country to prioritize the work that they can do and the job that they can get here. And that's oftentimes why we move across the country or why we do things in life. It's because, well, there's better work somewhere else and more money I can make, then work is often the most important thing. And so in America, what I'm trying to say is we live in a society, we live in this culture that is encouraging us to continually work harder and to continually make ourselves as useful and as productive as possible. If there's one thing that we value in America, it is definitely productivity, especially even when we talk about school, because it's not just society, but this trickles down into the way that even you guys are experiencing your life at middle school and high school, because you're not even in necessarily the workforce yet, but you're experiencing this sense of like, there's this pressure for me to continually produce good work, even while I'm at school. And so I want you to see this. There's a feeling that I felt when I was in middle school and high school, like it's hard to catch a break because you go to school and there's so much homework to be done. There's always another paper to write. There's always another test to take, and there's always another, dare I say, group project that you have to complete. I don't know who in the world invented group projects, but they're not great for anyone, because if you're great in school, you're just annoyed at the people who are like not doing their work, and if you're not great in school, you're kind of like, I'm not going to do my work anyways, so I don't know why I'm getting paired with people. And like, it's hard to coordinate your time and your energy to like meet up and do the project and get everything done, and so you put all the work in only to scrape by with a B+ because Craig over here didn't do his job, It's like, what's the point? I know, come on, Craig. I'm sorry if your name is Craig. Didn't mean to call you out. In high school, it felt like this. Like, you might say, like, I'm exhausted because I went to 1, 2, maybe 3 sports practices today on top of the paper that I had to write. And now I have to, I still haven't done my chores at home. And then, guess what? My pastor is continually telling me that I'm not reading my Bible enough, I'm not praying enough, I'm not memorizing enough scripture. So it's like, when does it end? Because also what I want to tell you is that it doesn't end. You graduate high school, and guess what? College is even harder. There's longer papers, there's bigger projects, and there's more group work to do. And then you graduate college, and then you go into the workforce, and no longer do you get a summer break. If you're feeling hopeless, maybe you're tracking with me. College and beyond does not provide any sort of a break from maybe that sense of that spinning that we're constantly doing. We're always doing something more. We're always being asked to do more things, and we're never doing enough things. And so from society, we talk about our school and how it impacts us there, but then it also trickles down into our home life too. And so when we look at our home life, you might say, well, things could be bad out there. Yes, there's a lot of pressure from society. There's a lot of pressure from my teachers and school and everything going on. But at least I'm good at home, I'm safe at home. But you're not always safe at home, because if you go home and all these other things are impacting you in the world, that stress can start to spill over into your home life. And so if you're stressed out in the world and then you come home, maybe you become a little bit more irritable, you snap at your parents or your brother or your sister or your cat. And what did your cat ever do to you to deserve that? Yeah, I know, yeah, they might scratch you. For me, when I went home, I would say home was a good place for me in general. For some of us, it's not a good place, but I ended up spending a lot of time in my room at home just trying to get everything done that I needed to get done. So I even felt like I became confined to that one small space because that was the only thing I had. I had to just do my work. I had to finish my papers and my math and all this stuff with only enough time to then hopefully go to bed when I was in high school. So maybe we get to this point, and here's what I want us to see. Maybe we get to this point where we realize that our workload or our responsibilities are just too much at the end of the day. It's too much. We can't handle it. So we need to find a way to take a break or to rest. Has anybody ever felt this before? Just like you're tracking with me? Okay. We need to take a break at some point because we got to find a way to rejuvenate our lives. But the bigger issue that we face is not that we're overworked as much as we don't know how to actually properly rest from the work that we are so desperately trying to take a break from. It's we don't know how to do that. And that cycle of stress continues because if we can't rest well, then the future doesn't look very optimistic because if we're not resting, then we're not going to be able to work well. And that cycle of stress and anxiety just continues to build up. And here's what I mean by this. So maybe you get home from a long day of school and sports practices or extracurricular activities, and you're saying, wow, okay, I just need to sit down and watch a TV show for 30 minutes. Okay, so you're okay, let me just sit down and watch a TV show. Maybe TV is not your thing. You're let me just complete a couple levels of the video game that I've been working my way through. Or some of you are maybe a little bit more on the social media train. So you're let me just pull my phone out. I'll just scroll through and get some updates on what's going on Instagram or BeReal or TikTok or any of the other things that you're on these days. And so you open your phone and you start scrolling through. So you sit there for 5 minutes and you're okay, I'm done. You put your phone down and you look at the clock and an hour has gone by. You're well, I was only there for 5 minutes. And then you're stressed because now you're well, I took this time off from doing the work that I should have been doing, and now I have to get caught up on my homework, but I don't have enough time, so then I lay down for bed, and I'm thinking, okay, I still have 100 things to do. And I'm stressed now, too, because now I'm now I have to fall asleep, but let me just pull my phone out one more time just to look at one more meme or something, and then you're losing sleep, and then you wake up the next day and you're tired and your mental capacity goes down, and then you're not doing great in school, and then classes start dropping off. It just feels bleak, right? It's what are we supposed to do when we're just trying to get through this life? There's a point in the Gospel of Matthew, which is a book of the Bible, where Jesus looks at the Israelites and he says this to them. It says, when he saw the crowds, he had compassion for them because they were harassed and helpless like sheep without a shepherd. You can leave that. You can actually leave the scripture up as I'm talking because it'll be good to reference it. But he says they were harassed and helpless. He looks out at his people and he says these people don't have anyone to help them. They feel harassed. They don't have a shepherd to guide them. I think this is something that Jesus could so easily look at us and say the exact same thing about. We're just trying to make it through life and we don't have any direction. We have no idea where we're supposed to go or where we're supposed to get some help. And Jesus is looking at us and he's saying, you need a shepherd, you need someone to guide you, but you're just wandering around trying to figure it out on your own. And if you've ever felt this way, you're not alone. Because I can guarantee you that at least every single person in here can relate with you on some level. So in the midst of all of the things that we have to get done, and it is a lot, there are a lot of things that we have to do in life. In the midst of all that, all of the pressures that we feel, I want us to at least tonight just stop and consider that the idea of gathering to worship God together, like we're doing tonight, is not just another thing for us to do during the week. This is not just another thing that we add to our schedule. This here, what we're doing here, is designed to be an intentional place for us to stop doing everything and to enter into a place of rest and peace. Which leads me to Psalm 23. We have the verse that we're in tonight, which is Psalm 23, 1 and 2. Which says this. Ethan preached on the first verse of Psalm 23 last week, which says, the Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want, or I shall lack nothing. That's another way to say that. Then it says, the shepherd makes me lie down in green pastures. The shepherd leads me beside still waters. And we're just going to talk about those two phrases. He makes me lie down in green pastures. He leads me beside still waters. This is not a terribly complicated verse for us to understand. But I will break it down for you briefly so you see what's going on. It says, he makes me lie down in green pastures. If you don't know what a pasture is, it's like a place where grass is. So the shepherd leads the sheep to green pastures, green grass where the sheep can lay down and find rest. If you could imagine the land of Israel, it's not necessarily the beautiful grassy lawn that you have outside of your house, hopefully, if you have grass. It's a dry and deserty sort of place. So the shepherd leading his sheep to a place where there is grass is even kind of like a harder place to find. The sheep couldn't just find this on their own, so they need the shepherd to take them to this place. A way that we might translate this into like human terms, because we're obviously not sheep, we're just being compared to sheep in this passage. You could say it like this: God provides us places of rest. God provides us places of rest. It's a simple statement, but sometimes it's hard to make that connection if we're just reading sheep, and we're like, what does this mean for me? God provides us places of rest. If we look at the next line, he leads me beside still waters. Still waters could also be called like restful waters or peaceful waters. Think about this as compared to like in the land of Israel, where water might come through in a flash flood, and it's not a great place for you to like sit and just drink water because it's kind of a chaotic situation. So you either have that, or you have a dry land where there's not a lot of water, and so it's just, where is the water? But the shepherd knows how to lead his sheep towards a place where they can get water to drink and be rejuvenated and refreshed. Also a way for them to experience rest from their daily life and from our daily life. So think about this as compared to like what I was talking about earlier. When we're talking about like the idea of like doom scrolling on social media or like binge watching a TV show until it's like 2 a.m. and you're like, oh man, I should probably go to bed because I have school in the morning, and it is morning. What I would hopefully encourage you to see is that when the shepherd is leading us to a place of rest, he's not leading us to sit down on the couch and just veg out for like 4 hours. He's leading us to a place where we can experience things that are actually restful in our lives, or maybe leading us to a place like this where we're at church and this is a place to take a break from all the chaos and the things that we think might be restful but are not really restful in our lives. And I'll talk a little bit more about what that looks like in a minute. Another verse I want to read, I don't have it on the screen, but there's an injunction that we have, or a command that we are given in the Bible to rest. This is from Exodus chapter 20. God is telling the Israelites, his people, he says this: remember the Sabbath day and keep it holy. 6 days you shall labor and do all your work, but the seventh day is a Sabbath to the Lord your God. On it you shall not do any work. And he continues on. But he's saying, look, I gave you 1 day out of the week to just rest, to just take a break from the things that you're doing and just be with me and actually experience something that's rejuvenating so that then you can go back to work and be benefited from it. We get a verse in the New Testament which says this, Hebrews 4:11, let us therefore strive to enter that rest so that no one may fall by the same sort of disobedience. And so what I want you to see here is resting is contrasted with the idea of disobedience. When God asks us to rest, when he, in Psalm 23, is leading us into green pastures and places where there are still water, he's saying, come and follow me and enter into this rest that we can experience in this life with him. And to not do so could easily be called disobedience. And so you might think, well, if I'm a Christian, I want to follow God and I want to do what he says. One of the things that God tells us to do is rest. It's a command. It's not actually an option in the Bible to just say, oh, I can rest later, or maybe like when I'm not busy, I won't rest anymore. That's not an option. Every single day and every single week and every single month, we need to be building patterns of rest into our lives. One, because God rested himself when he created the world, and two, because he then commands us to do the same. And if we think that we're better than God, then we can continue working as hard as we want, but we're not better than God is the issue. God gave us rest in order to help benefit us, and it's a good thing. And there's one more verse I want to share as we continue on, where it's more of an invitation from Jesus himself in the book of Matthew. So this is Matthew 11, verses 28 through 30. And Jesus is saying this. He's saying, come to me. He's welcoming all of us, a free invitation. Come to me, all who labor and are heavy laden. And if you're reading this and you're thinking like, I don't know if that's me, the point of this verse is that it's you. So if you are like, I feel like I'm doing okay on my own, you're self-selecting yourself out of what Jesus is offering you tonight. He's saying, all who labor and are heavy laden, as we go through life, we face labors, we face trials, we face things that are burdensome. A lot of you raised your hands when I was explaining what I was explaining earlier. There's a lot of pressures. There's homework that you have to do tonight. There's things that are going to be burdensome as you go through this life. And Jesus is saying, if that's you, and it is, I will give you rest. Honestly, I feel like I could just stop right now and just say, go to small groups. I'm not going to. But if you just read that and you get that tonight, come to me, all who labor and are heavy laden, and I will give you rest. If you can take that with you tonight, that is the most important thing from this message. Just the idea that God is offering us rest in a way that nothing else in this world can offer us rest. Nothing. Social media, video games, TV, even like reading books or going for walks are things that are great and probably actually good for us. God is offering us rest that we cannot get unless we go to him. Jesus offers this. He says, take my yoke upon you and learn from me, for I am gentle and lowly in heart, and you will find rest for your souls. For my yoke is easy and my burden is light. Jesus is giving us a path forward so that we don't have to bear our own burdens by ourselves on our own for the rest of our lives. He's saying, look, if you are having a hard time in life, if you join in with me, if you come to me, there's still going to be work in life. I'm not giving you like an out and saying, just sit on the couch for the rest of your life. You can just do whatever you want. No, he's saying life is hard, but think about how much better it will be if you walk that life with me versus trying to do it on your own, because you'll just wear yourself out. It'll be hard labor, and if you labor with me, your labor will be sweet. So how does this all then help us address the problems and the things that we talked about earlier in the sermon? So we talk about society and school and ourselves and everything that we're trying to do to just keep up and maintain a sense of like floating or like keeping our head above water. And here's how it all comes together. If we start with ourselves and we ask, how can I truly experience rest in my life? This is probably one of the most important things that we can ask ourselves, at least tonight. How can I truly find rest in my life? You can say this: I can find godly rest when I accept God's definition of rest. I'll say it again. I can find godly rest when I accept God's definition of rest. And I am contrasting that with the human definition of rest. So if I'm trying to find my own way to have rest in my life, it's not going to work out. I need to redefine rest as God defines what rest is. So what is my definition of rest? What is our definition of rest? Something like sitting on the couch, coming home from school, and just trying to do nothing, like watching TV or falling into whatever pattern is like the most convenient or entertaining. So maybe you could ask yourself this question and think about this when you go into small groups tonight. What is the thing that you go to if you're going to just try and relax? What's the thing that you find the most entertaining, the thing that you use to like cope as you try and work your way through life? Maybe it's social media, maybe it's even music. You just turn on music and you want to tune out the world. Maybe it's like mobile games on your phone, or I don't know, maybe you like reading comics or something. That seems cool. But what is your form of just stepping out of the world and just trying to like detach your mind from the stress and things that are going on in life? That is your definition of rest. When you look at God's definition of rest, he offers us something different. He says, come to me. And the Bible gives us a good idea of what that looks like as we read it. It means spending time in God's word with him. If you have a Bible, it's opening up the Bible and just seeing what God has to say to you as he speaks through his word. It's spending time with him in prayer, maybe spending time in solitude away from people and just being with yourself and with God, who's with you in the moment of solitude. And maybe it's something like fasting. If you don't know what fasting is, I'll explain it here as I keep going. So there was a service trip that we just went on with some of our high school students, which was great. And I had a great time with Ethan and Anna Summer and the group that we went with. One of the things that I asked the team to do as we went to the city of Portland to go and serve there, well, I asked them to do three things. I said, I need you to be on a reading plan, so be reading something from your Bible. Be memorizing some verses that we all agreed to memorize together, and then I wanted everybody to fast from something. Raise your hand if you're aware of what fasting is, if you heard that term before. Okay, it's something that Christians do, it's something that non-Christians do. It's usually a spiritual practice where you deprive yourself of something, traditionally food, Or you can fast from various other things. Like if you're really attached to coffee, maybe you'll fast from coffee. You'll give up coffee for a period of time. Or you just love chocolate a lot, so you'll give up chocolate. Or maybe you, like a lot of us on the trip, said, let's give up our time that we spend on social media or YouTube or Netflix or any number of the things that are filling my life with this idea of like restfulness that's not really restful. So we gave all those things up. After a week of fasting from those things, I had us all go around the circle as we sat down, and I said, how has your fast been going? And every single person went around and said essentially something along the lines of, I'm surprised by how much more peaceful and restful I feel even just after 1 week of giving these things up. I feel so much better. I was like, wow, that's like at least confirmation. Like around the room, we all felt kind of the same thing. And I'll say, I gave up the same exact things. I was like, I'll give up any video games or TV, and I just said I'm not going to be like watching movies or doing anything. And I felt the very same way. I felt so much more rejuvenated, and I was thinking, wow, I'm getting more sleep because there's nothing to like keep me up later in the night. And so I said, yeah, I'll just go to bed, and then getting more sleep allowed me to be more awake during the day, and then I felt like I was more productive, and then it started this positive cycle of things that I was like, wow, this is actually very helpful. And you might be thinking too, like, wow, is Austin just learning this lesson? And the answer is no. But the interesting thing is that I've continually gone through seasons of my own life where I've taken these things out of my life, and then as humans, maybe you can relate with this, we slowly kind of fall back into patterns, and it can be so easy to just drift back into things that are not really helpful for us. And so what I would encourage you to see from this is that in your own life, there are things that you can do and good choices that you can make that will help you succeed and move forward with, like, again, these healthy choices, but sometimes you might fall back into things. And so you might need to be reminded of that. And that's what I'm hoping you hear tonight, is that there are good things that we continually need to remind ourselves of and continue to walk in as we walk through life. The unintended side effects that I thought of this fast that we did on this service trip were that I also became such a better husband to my wife. I started like cleaning the apartment more than I normally do, and throwing stuff away that I was like, why do we own these things? I don't want them. Or donating things. And Karina was like, what are you doing? Like, who are you? And I was like, I don't know. I'm just not watching as much TV, so I'm looking at things. And I'm like, why do we have this plant that's dead? I have a lot of other plants that are alive. Sometimes they die. So it was just beneficial. And she was like, wow, this is really nice. I like this change that you've made in your life. And I said, I do too. So anyways, unintended side effects. And some of these things can then spill out into your relationships with your family at home. So maybe instead of having a more irritable relationship with your brothers, sisters, parents, you might be like, wow, I have a lot more of a pleasant relationship with my parents, even though normally it feels like they nag me or they're complaining about things, but I'm much more nice to them when I start making these changes in my own heart first. And then beyond that, what I would love for you to see is also like, when you go to school and when you have a lot of work on your plate and you're looking at like, how can I get all the things done today? And I looked at my own life today and I felt this. I want you guys to hear that too. Like, I'm not preaching this from a sense of like, oh, I used to be there and I've gotten over it. Like, I walk through these things every day and I felt very overwhelmed all day today. So I literally had to take 30 minutes. I literally went, and 30 minutes I said, I'm just going to put things down. I'm just going to be with God. And I work plenty more than 8 hours on like a Wednesday, so I'm not like looking at my life and saying like, man, I'm stopping work, but I'm doing this. I'm setting aside work because it can so easily encroach on our time. And I said, you know what's most important right now is just to be with God. And I kid you not, I was just in that moment, just like starting to feel like that anxiousness rise up, and just even just sitting down and closing my eyes, I could feel like my heart rate start to drop. Like it was like, oh, like it's okay. And I said, God, I just need you right now. I need you today because there's too much for me to do on my own. There's too much for me to accomplish. The emails and the projects and the things that we're doing will get done. But right now, it's important for me to just be here with you. And I left that time, and I was so much more rejuvenated. And so what I want you to see from that is just, if you are overwhelmed in school and the work that you're doing is just too much, consider that maybe waking up on a daily basis and just giving the day to God and saying, God, I don't know if I'm going to be able to get done all of my homework today. And maybe that's okay. Maybe I'm not going to necessarily end up in a place where if I don't do my homework and I don't pass my tests and I don't pass my classes and I don't get into college, I'm not going to end up homeless one day, which is what I hear from some of you sometimes. That's not a one-to-one connection. It's okay to not turn in one homework assignment sometimes because there's just an overwhelming amount of stuff. But I will say, when you dedicate your work to God, sometimes he allows you to do things that you never thought were possible, like get through with a crazy amount of efficiency a paper or a project that you're working on, and I've seen it happen in my life over and over again. It might be good to just put it down and go to bed sometimes too. And this, did I put this up here? Let's see. No, we're good. Okay. There's a verse in Psalm 127 that says this, "It is vain that you rise up early and go late to rest, eating the bread of anxious toil, for God gives to his beloved sleep." And I've held on to that verse for a long time because I've done that so much. I've tried to stay up, and I've tried to work, and I've tried to do everything on my own, but then I just need to remind myself that God has given us sleep. And if I try and do everything on my own, that does not mean that I'm going to get it done better than I could have if I had let God give me the rest that I need. I was talking to Anna Summer earlier this week, and she said something like this. You can write this down, or you can ask her for the quote. But she said, "Consider that God can do more for you in 6 days of work than you could do on your own in 7. So it's the idea of like even just taking a day off and trusting that God will still allow you to get the work done that you need to get done is so beneficial. And just say like, it's not in my power. And maybe it's just waking up every day and acknowledging that and saying, God, this is you, it's not me. This is you who's working through me. Whatever you want for my life, I want that for my life. And I know that I can't do it on my own. So I'm even going to consider taking a day off and not working every single day. I want to give you a couple things as I close up for tonight and send you off to small groups. If you're asking the question and you're thinking, like, what does it actually look like for me to apply this to my life? What does it look like for me to go out from here and do anything about what Austin has shared tonight? Here's a few things. Choose to rest. Choose to follow the shepherd. That's what this verse is asking us to do in Psalm 23. He's saying, follow the good shepherd, and he will guide you into these paths of rest. So you can choose to follow him, and you can choose to enter that rest. But it takes a choice. And I think the fun, maybe not the fun thing, but the interesting thing is I could tell you guys all this stuff, and you might think, like, that's awesome. But you're still going to go home and just play video games and watch TV. And I know, because I'm not saying all of you are going to do that. I'm saying, like, I've done that. I heard the sermon, and I thought, wow, that's great. And I believe it, but I don't believe it enough to actually do it. But I want you to hold on to the idea that at some point, maybe even if you don't do it tonight or this week, I want you to remember the idea when you are feeling that moment where you are stressed out and you are having a hard time, even if you don't follow the advice tonight or if you don't follow what your shepherd is telling you to do, which is just to take that rest and rest in him. Remember the idea that he is there so that if it does get worse or if it does get harder, that is still an option, and it's never too late. You're never too far gone. You're never too broken. You've never dug yourself into too deep of a hole. You can still choose to follow the shepherd, and that's the good news of the gospel of the Bible. You can always choose to rest. You can recognize that you don't have to do it all on your own. If you are interested, I would maybe advise you to quit social media forever. That's an application. I did it, and I have enjoyed every day ever since. And some of you are like, Austin, you should be on Be Real. And I said, that's okay. I don't want to be on it. And if you're on it, I think that's great. I don't think that's a bad idea for your life. But I've enjoyed my time just not being tied to some of those things in my own life. And if you're not ready to make that decision for yourself, what I would recommend is maybe like take a break from social media for a week and just say like, I'll give it up. I'll give it a try. 1 week. Why not? Give it a try. Consider maybe building into a rhythm of your life, like not working every single day. So if you have schoolwork, what if you considered saying Sundays are holy days? I'm not going to work on Sunday. I'm going to get all my schoolwork done on Saturday so I can go to church and be at church. Ooh, what a concept, right? Like instead of waking up and being like, man, I've got another 4 projects to do, while you're worshiping God, you could say, I'm going to get it all done on Saturday so I can enjoy the time together with the family of God and then go home and enjoy my afternoon with my family and do whatever else you want to do on Sunday to rest from your work. Consider not doing work on Sundays. Consider getting up maybe just a little bit earlier so you could spend that time with God in the morning and just dedicate the day to God and recognize that he is the first and foremost important thing in your life. Here's another one. Consider putting your phone away during church. This is a point where you should look to your neighbor and say, oh, is your phone out? Called out. If you do have your phone out during church, I'm not trying to make you feel bad, but I will say if you're on your phone, that means you're not taking the time to actually rest from the things that are filling your life, that are not really actually giving you any sort of rest. You're just sitting here doing the same thing you do at home, and it's one, disrespectful to God as much as it is to the people around you who might be distracted by it. But I would say maybe put it away. And I say this every week, but if you have a Bible, it's so powerful to bring that Bible with you when you go to church, because guess what? When you see me holding this Bible, you know what I'm holding. It's a Bible. But when you see me holding my phone, I could be on my Bible, but I could also be on a million other different things that my phone has. So maybe put your phone away while you're here so that you can enjoy the time and worship with your brothers and sisters here while we're here. And then maybe one more thing. Consider making a rule for yourself that might be something like, I'm not going to play any video games or watch any TV or even go on social media during certain times of the day or certain times of the week. One of the best things that I've also done is just restrict the time that I'm able to be on things. So I'd say maybe I'm not going to engage in these things during the weekdays, but maybe on the weekends I'll give myself time to do it. The earlier you can start building these rules and principles for yourselves, rather than just complaining that your parents are putting rules on you for yourself. The point of your parents saying hey, maybe we're not going to do certain things is because they see the long-term beneficial aspects of those things for your life. But if you start to say, maybe I should be carving out that time because I can so easily get distracted from my math homework when my phone is sitting right next to me. So maybe I'll put my phone somewhere else so I can focus on this during this time. So maybe set up some boundaries or restrictions. It could be a good idea to help you get your work done and also engage in healthy rest during the week. And I think those are some principles that can help you as you're considering, how could I follow my shepherd, my God, into these patterns of rest for my week? Whatever you do as you continue to walk through your life, I hope that you can walk away tonight remembering this message that God does give us true rest. He offers us something that is different than what we can find on our own. If you're having a stressful day and you're thinking, man, I just feel overwhelmed right now, I think a good question to ask yourself is, how have I been neglecting to rest in my life? Let me pray. God, we thank you for giving us your word to help us see who you are and how we can follow you with our lives. We thank you for Psalm 23, which gives us a pattern of rest and rejuvenation as we look at how we can follow the shepherd like sheep follow a shepherd. I pray that you give us a blessed time in our small groups today to discuss these things and to even identify and pinpoint some of the ways that we've been neglecting to rest in our life or neglecting to follow you. Not out of a heart of guilt or shame, but just as a way to recognize that maybe there's some things that we're doing that are actually not really helping us. I pray that you can help us walk towards you and closer with you as we walk through this life, and just bless the rest of the time that we have here together, God. We pray these things in your name. Amen.